Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Real Stuff podcast. This episode is part 2 of my birth story. And if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, please go back and listen to that. Basically, what ended up happening in this recording is part 1 is kind of a recap of all of the things leading up to the labor and delivery, including every single thing I did to try to put myself into labor and all of the different stages and steps I went through before we actually got into the hospital. So this episode, part 2, is about to start with the moment that Michael and I got to the hospital and started going through the actual labor and delivery process. So here we go, part 2. I'm looking at my birth log here because I made Michael kind of write down all of the time codes of everything that happened as we got here because I really wanted to remember the order of everything. But I have right here, we entered the hospital at 10:30 p.m. Walking into the hospital was really funny because we walked to the labor and delivery floor, and the first thing that I see down the hallway is one of the nurses kind of looking at me and Michael with like a funny face. As we start approaching her and we get down, she looks at me and she's like, "Oh my God, I follow you. I've been watching your Instagram stories for weeks as you're drinking your eviction smoothies." And if you don't know what that is, I had been making a smoothie with pineapple and dates, calling it an eviction smoothie, basically a smoothie that is said to ripen your cervix and get the baby evicted from you. So she's like, "I've been following you for years. It's so funny. I didn't know you were here." It was kind of just a funny start to the night because it really loosened us up. Like, as I was saying, we were kind of in the zone of, we're excited, this is happening, let's do it. But it definitely made us laugh and feel at ease kind of right away in the hospital. So we get into the triage room, I want to say around 10:45 p.m. My biggest worry here was that they were about to hook me up to these machines and tell me these are Braxton Hicks contractions. Because once again, even though they were kind of somewhat regular at this point and felt like they were maybe 8 to 10 minutes apart, they were not painful at all. And I was not needing to pause what I was doing to have anyone squeeze my hips, nothing. So when she put the monitor on me, I remember calling the nurse over and saying, "Can you check if that was a contraction? Like, do you see it on your side?" Immediately, the nurse was like, "Oh yeah, that's a contraction." You know, like the number shot up and you're having contractions. So I was grateful that that happened. Then the doctor came in, he said hi to us, and he's like, "Let me check you and see where you're at." This is now 11 p.m. He told me I was still 4 centimeters, which is what I was 2 days before. And he said I was 60% effaced. And I said, "Hey, the other doctor told me I was 4 centimeters and 80% effaced. Like, how did I get 20% less effaced in 2 days?" And he was like, "No, it's just that is a subjective number based on what we're feeling." Obviously, the other doctor felt like I was more effaced than this one, but whatever. He said, "The point is you're still 4 centimeters. As of maybe 11:30 p.m., my contractions were 4 minutes apart." At this point, the doctor is just chatting with us, and everything was kind of chill and slow paced because, you know, I wasn't in writhing pain. I wasn't demanding an epidural yet, but they all knew that I wanted to get in and get a room and get situated. And I remember the doctor turning to Michael at this point and asking him, "Do you want to help me deliver the baby? Like, do you want to catch the baby when she comes out?" Michael was like, "What?" He's never heard of this before. He was like, "Honestly, not really." That's not what my goal is or my life dream, but what do you really mean by that? And the doctor was like, "Well, I could put you in a gown and I could give you gloves and I could walk you through what to do and you can help pull the baby out." And I was like, "Michael, do it, do it, do it." Like that is my dream, is for Michael to get involved in that way. Because for my first labor, he was just up at my side, like holding my hand. But I don't know, I love an involved partner in this situation. So by the way, I know some people, that is the last thing they want from their partner. They want the partner far away from the vagina, come up by the head, get away. I'm like, "Michael, do it." And he's like, "Listen, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll have you put me in the outfit and get me ready, but I might not stay down there. Like, I might migrate up and come by her head." And I'm like, "Okay, fine. You know, you can decide. If you're queasy, I don't want you to faint or pass out or anything. So you could decide where you want to stand, but that would be so fun." Around 12:20, I was transferred to the delivery room and we were getting all set up for my epidural. Story for another day, but as I was getting my epidural put in and I saw the big piece of tape that they have to put on your back to hold the catheter in your spine. I told the anesthesiologist, by the way, last labor and delivery, I got a horrific rash on my back that I believe is from the adhesive on this tape. And it wound up being the worst part of my postpartum experience. Is there any way that you could use like another type of tape? She was like, oh no, where did you deliver? And I told her the hospital I delivered at in New York City last time. And she was like, oh, well, I actually think our hospital uses a different type of adhesive from that hospital. But, you know, there are a few types, but this is the one we use. And I think it's different from that one. To be honest, what's crazy is I didn't even really remember how horrific the rash was until, spoiler alert, I got it again. But I guess I didn't even remember how bad it was because I didn't push her to please give me something hypoallergenic or please give me something else. I just was like, oh, okay, if you think it's different, cool. And she put it on me. And as you probably know from my social media, I wound up getting an even worse, terrible rash, my entire back in the whole shape of where the tape is put on. It lasted for weeks. I had to take an oral steroid postpartum, absolutely the worst part of my postpartum experience. It was burning, itching. I'm now almost a month postpartum and I still have marks from the rash, although it's not itchy anymore. I'm back in the newborn phase, and without fail, every single person that has come over to our house to meet baby Coco has complimented her pajama onesies from Magnetic Me. Now, most of my other mom friends around my age already swear by these outfits for their babies, but the people who seem particularly obsessed with these outfits are people from my parents' generation who are used to super inconvenient buttons on baby pajamas. They are just blown away by the magnetic closures, which make diaper changes so easy and so quick. All the clothes from Magnetic Me are so soft, they're sustainable, and they have the cutest prints designed by female artists around the world. They snap open and closed with magnetic closures, making outfit changes so easy, so fast, and completely free of buttons or even zippers. My mom was helping me change Coco the other day, and the two of us just could not stop talking about how amazing these magnetic PJs are. It makes changing diapers even more accessible for aging parents, which means more free time for me and Michael. Getting the baby dressed has never been easier than with Magnetic Me, and you need to order these for your baby. Go to magneticme.com today and look at all of the cute patterns. New customers will get 15% off their first order at magneticme.com. But anyway, I got my epidural. It was also a little bit of a different epidural from last time. Last time, immediately I felt like I couldn't feel the pain from the contractions. This time, granted, I wasn't in as much pain going into the epidural, but I just remember feeling like I didn't actually go numb for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes after I got the epidural put in. I was like waiting, it was kind of weird. I was like lying in the bed, kept wiggling my toes, being like, when are they going to go numb? Because they're still not numb. And then right around, I guess, 1:15 a.m., so that's about a half an hour after they started the epidural, which would be about 15 minutes after it was all in, I started to wiggle my toes and they started to feel tingly. And I was thinking, okay, it's happening. But just as I started to feel like my feet were going numb, I'm lying in the bed. I'm in the room alone with Michael, and there's one nurse in there who is on her way out of the room. And she turns the lights down. She's like, you guys rest. We'll come back in a little and check you. As she's walking out the door, all of a sudden, I don't even know how to describe what my vision was doing, but the room was dark, but it was like all of a sudden I start seeing like bright white spots. And I realize my vision is kind of going out. And then my right ear, all of a sudden the sound just goes silent. And it's like I'm losing my hearing and I'm losing my vision. And thankfully, the nurse was just on her way out. And so I call her back in and I'm like, excuse me, can you come back for a second? I feel like I'm going to faint. I started to feel like I was just totally losing consciousness. And so at this point, I close my eyes because when I'm about to faint, I don't want to see the room disappear. I just want to close my eyes. So I keep my eyes closed and I'm breathing really slowly. She comes back to me, kind of rushes back over to me, and the whole rest of this 5-minute period, I'm sort of very out of it. I didn't actually pass out, but I just had my eyes closed and I was just listening to the sounds of the room. And so the next thing I hear is her talking on some sort of walkie-talkie, paging the anesthesiologist to come back, paging someone to come into our room, calling all these people. People start coming into the room. Michael's standing next to me holding my hand, and I am just feeling like I'm slipping into unconsciousness. And I'm doing everything in my power to not disappear into the blackness. Like I'm thinking of a thread and I'm like holding it and I'm breathing, and my ears just started to sound like I was underwater. Like I absolutely could not hear anyone. Everyone was all muffled. I just heard like my own heart beating, and I couldn't see and I didn't want to open my eyes, but I knew if I opened my eyes, it would just be black. I just all of a sudden at this point, my whole lower body is now numb. And I think partially because from the waist down, I was numb, I essentially completely forgot that I had a baby in my stomach. Like I forgot that I was pregnant. And the only thing I could think about was myself and that I was losing consciousness. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a major catastrophizer when it comes to fainting or losing grip on reality. The moment I start to fade into blackness, I am not chill. I have zero chill. And all I can think about is the fact that I am not going to wake up and I am dying. And I actually said out loud to Michael, in hindsight, it's kind of funny, but in the moment it was so, actually how I was feeling. I said to Michael, please don't let me die. And he was like, he didn't laugh in the moment. Like that's how scary the moment was. He came down and he was like, you're not going to die. And I was like, okay, please just don't let me die. And I remember then at that moment, I start hearing the other voices in the room talking, and I hear them say, baby's heart rate is low. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a baby in my stomach. I completely forgot why I'm here, what the point is of me being here. Like I forgot everything that's happening. And now I'm thinking, please don't let this baby die. And I'm literally just squeezing Michael's hand, being like, help us, like keep me here. And at this point, they rolled me onto my side, and the anesthesiologist is like fiddling with the drip, the IV drip, and the catheter in my back, and they're changing all these numbers and giving me different fluids. And because I turned to the side, the heart rate monitor that was on the baby's heart rate all of a sudden got dislodged. And so her heart rate went from being very low to just no heartbeat. They can't find the heartbeat all of a sudden. And honestly, what was going through my head at this time was, here's what's going to happen. Either one of two things are about to happen. I'm either about to die, and I'm going to die. It's going to make the baby die, and Michael's going to be left with our son alone. Like, I'm just telling you the most horrific visions that were going through my mind. I was thinking that's either option one, or option two is I'm about to slip into full unconsciousness and pass out. And the next time I wake up, I'm going to be in like a different room, and they're going to be like, everything's fine, but you had a C-section. Here's your baby. And so I was just like trying to hold on for dear life. Just to give you some numbers, I asked them to tell me these numbers here. So my blood pressure, which was normally like 115/70 or 115/80, dropped down to 78/48. And then the baby's heart rate, which was typically like in the 140s or 150s, dropped down to 95. Basically, my understanding of what happened is that after you get an epidural, sometimes, and this didn't happen to me the first time, but sometimes it can cause your blood pressure to just tank and drop a lot. That then sends the baby into a little bit of distress, which causes their heart rate to drop. But once my heart rate started, or once my blood pressure started normalizing, the baby's heart rate was able to come back to normal. So as I'm lying there, at this point, they're like, there's no heartbeat. Like, we can't find it. And Michael is like, what is going on? Like, he's just watching his wife say, don't let me die. All of a sudden, they can't find the heartbeat. I felt so bad for this man in this moment. And obviously for myself, but I was a little bit out of it. Next thing you know, I start to say, I think my hearing is like getting better in one ear. It's starting to feel like it's coming back a little. And I open my eye a little, and it's like spotty, but I can see. And slowly everything's coming back. It's very slow. And just as I'm starting to see again and hear a little bit better, they're like, okay, we found her heart rate. She's back. Her heartbeat is back to normal. And I think hearing that her heart rate went back to normal kind of calmed me down. I know my issue wasn't like a panic attack, but the calming down definitely helped me take a good breath and probably helped stabilize my blood pressure. And I kind of started to be able to hear and see again, and everything kind of just returned to normal. And after they got the baby's heart rate stable and my blood pressure came back, all these doctors just slowly were like trickling out of the room, going back to whatever they were doing. And it kind of felt like all of a sudden, like after that whole hoopla, I don't even remember everyone leaving, but like eventually it was just like the last nurse was like, okay, we'll come check you soon, and like closed the door. And it was just me and Michael in the room. And we just like look at each other like we had just been through this pretty traumatic moment. And we were like, wow. And now it's like as quickly as that all started, it's now over. And we're now in this quiet room, just the two of us. And we just were like kind of crying a little bit, not like sobbing, but we were hugging each other, crying. And I was like, that was so scary. Like that was really terrifying. And as I said, I felt really sad for him because I was fading. Like I was not fully lucid, but he was there. And I'm just envisioning how he must have felt, feeling like he has no control over what's happening. He's watching his wife with his baby in her stomach pass out, and he can't do anything about it. And he's just looking at the numbers and the monitor. And I felt so bad for him. So we just had a little moment of like crying, and then we kind of wiped tears, and we were like, okay, well now I feel good and the epidural's working and we're good from here. Like we had sort of a moment where we were like, we're back, baby. Like that fucking sucked, but here we are and everything's good and we're going to have a good experience. And I'm still so excited to be here. And I don't know, it was just like a bad moment that in hindsight, when I tell the story of my labor and delivery, the whole experience still feels so positive, even though we had that really bad moment. And I'm grateful nothing really bad happened from that moment, but whew, it was pretty crazy. So I'm fully numb, my epidural's working, and still 4 centimeters dilated at 1:30 a.m. So basically I'm not progressing much. And the doctor tells me the plan will be to start you on pitocin right now. We'll check you in a couple hours. If your water's not broken, then we'll potentially break your water. I remember him saying, you could have a baby by like 6 a.m. So we're like, okay, 5.5 hours to go. Let's do this. I get my pitocin at 1:45, and I'm just a lot of this is just like the doctors come in, they bump up your pitocin level, and then they leave you. I know the whole point was like, let's get here so that we could sleep. I was absolutely not going to sleep. I was just buzzing with excitement of being about to push and I don't know, the craziness of what had just happened. I was not in sleeping territory. So I'm wide awake. And I actually remember at 1:45 a.m., for some reason, randomly, I decide to open my phone and look at Milo on the baby monitor and just like see how he's sleeping. Randomly, the moment I open my phone, he is awake, crying in the crib, saying, I can't find baby. Baby is his little doll that he carries everywhere. He's like, I can't find baby. I can't find baby. And I'm sitting here being like, oh my God, first of all, what are the odds that the moment I open my phone is the moment he's crying? And thankfully, our nanny who was home, who had the monitor on too, heard him. But I was able to text her and be like, this has actually been happening a few nights in a row. He's dropped baby out of his crib. So I was like, can you go in and give him baby back? And she went in, she put baby in the crib again. And like, it was just kind of one of those first moments of, wow, I can't be there to attend to my toddler because I'm somewhere else for this other baby. And it was a little sad, but our nanny was there to the rescue and baby was returned to the crib. Now at 2:30 a.m., I really felt a total difference in my ability to breathe. Before this, the baby felt like she was way higher up and still had feet and limbs kind of around my ribs. At 2:30 a.m., she must have been so much lower down, like really on her way out because I felt like I could breathe so much better. And the doctor came in at around 2:45 and said, let's bump up the pitocin a little. So every time they bump up the pitocin or give me a new dose of that, it's like theoretically, my dilation should be moving quicker. I don't remember them like checking how dilated I was at every one of these steps, but they were just moving things along. 4:45, the doctor comes in and breaks my water. And this is another example of how my labor was different. Last time I was just lying in the hospital bed after getting the epidural and my water just popped and broke and I felt a gush of warmth on my numb legs. This time he had to go in with that little hook thing and broke the water, which is also something that gets the process moving. Now it's 4:45. From this time until the baby came out, which was 6:13 a.m. So the doctor was very accurate with a 6 a.m. baby. between 4:45 and the birth time, the doctor was just hanging out with me and Michael in the room. And the three of us were just talking about life. We were chatting about our move to the suburbs. He was talking about TikTok, his wife, work. It was just such a calm and relaxed environment. And the three of us were having so much fun. And I was grateful that he didn't have other patients that he needed to go to, because he really was just hanging out with us, and it made the experience just so enjoyable. Like, we were really just having a fun time together while we were waiting for me to dilate. And at about 5:30, he checked me. He said, at this point, you are 7 to 8 centimeters dilated. You're 80% effaced. Things are happening. Let's get Michael dressed up in his gear. And as he's getting Michael dressed in this gown and the gloves, all he says to me is, I'm going to sit you up in the hospital bed. Like, they moved the bed up a little. And he said, I just want you to be a little bit more vertical so that the pressure of the baby from gravity on your pelvis will start to dilate you more. And all he said to me is, tell me when you start to feel rectal pressure, which, you know, a lot of people say that the moment before you're about to push the baby out, it feels like you have to poop. So he's like, tell me when you start to feel that. And at this point, he's getting Michael ready. We're all kind of laughing. It's just like a silly vibe. All the lights are on now. It's like nurses coming in and out, and we're all just hanging out, laughing. I remember the nurse that had been with me since I got into triage. She was sort of setting up the little station where they bring the baby over to, with like the warmer and the place where they weigh the baby. And she was like, you know, our hospital doesn't have hats with bows. So what we do is, if it's going to be a girl, we make our own hat with a bow by taking 2 hats and turning like the second hat into the bow on the first hat. And so she was like over there making a little bow hat, and she showed it to me, and it was just like the cutest hat ever. In fact, I had her sign the hat, like write her name in it, because I wanted to remember her, because also she was the nurse who was with me throughout that whole terrifying experience I had. And I felt like I had bonded with her, and I felt like she was really amazing throughout the process. So we had her sign Coco's hat, and we'll keep that forever. Meanwhile, at some point I say to the doctor, I'm feeling rectal pressure. He's like, okay, tell me when you feel rectal pressure that's not going away. Like, you're going to feel some rectal pressure as you have a contraction, but tell me when it's not stopping. And I was like, okay, I will try to feel for that, even though I'm extremely numb. Also, this whole time, like when you have an epidural and they're trying to sit you up and you're trying to move yourself up, it is just so hard to move. You have to like hold onto the bed and hoist yourself up, because you are absolutely unable to move your lower half. And your butt, like just lying in the bed there with your butt feeling numb already from the epidural, but then you're like also lying immobile in a hospital bed. It just very tingly, like not a lot of blood flow. It's a little uncomfortable. So I'm sitting there. I tell him I'm starting to feel pressure, and he is kind of moving slowly. And at one point, he comes over to me. He checks me like a cervical check, and he's like, okay, this is, I actually remember, and I have it on video. He literally feels around in there, and he just goes, this is going to be sweet. And I'm like, what do you mean by sweet? And he's like, you are just so dilated. The baby is like right here. Like, as soon as we start pushing, this baby is flying out. I'm like, okay, so should I start pushing? And he's like, no, I really want you to wait until, like, let's let her come down on her own, and then it will be even easier. Then you don't have to like exert so much effort, which was just such a different strategy, I feel like, from my first time. And I liked it. It was nice. It was like, okay, I will calmly push when it's time, but I'm just like letting her do her job first. So eventually I start feeling the rectal pressure that's not going away. And I tell him I feel the pressure. Now I have a whole video. A lot of people are wondering how I have these videos. I set up my phone on like the windowsill of the hospital room. And I asked all the doctors and nurses first, are you okay if I do this? They said yes, which I was happy about. My first hospital wouldn't let me record anything. I set up my phone facing me so that you could kind of see me. And then the other angle was facing like where my legs are. You can't see into the baby coming out, but you can see Michael and the doctor. And I basically have this 19-minute video of them getting into gear, and then the entire pushing experience, which was total 8 minutes. I'm so excited that I have this video, because it's so hard to remember exactly what happens in that heightened moment of your life. But now I can go back and watch this video and just remember the vibes of the room, what everyone said, like everything that was happening. Basically, at this point, Michael and the doctor are standing down there, and the doctor puts his fingers in and he's like, okay, her head is right here. Michael, go ahead, feel. So Michael goes in, feels her head. Michael's like, oh my God, Lucie, she's right here. And the doctor's like, Lucie, you could feel too. Just like lean forward and feel. So I go down and I feel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so slimy. I feel her head. And he's like, yep, okay, here's what I want you to do. Just deep breath in, push for 10 seconds. Another thing I did in this labor that I did with Milo is I asked them to bring me a rolling mirror that they could put down between my legs so that I could see what was happening. A lot of people don't know you can ask for this. Also, a lot of people don't want this at all. This is my dream, is to watch the baby come out. And I wish I could have delivered the baby. That's, I wanted to be an OBGYN at some point in my life. So I wanted to see what was happening. So they wheel this standing mirror down. It ends up being a little hard for you to actually see because there are a lot of people that end up getting in the way. And with my first labor, I remember asking a doctor, like, could you please step aside? I cannot see anymore. And I want to watch. Like, it is useful for you because you could see how effective your pushes are, but it's also cool to see. After we all felt the baby's head, the doctor had me push for like 10 seconds, maybe 2 times. And each time I could see in the mirror her head moving lower and lower and lower. When she was really, really close to the exit, you could just see a full head of hair sitting right there. By the way, I had a lot of acid reflux. I think people say you have a lot of acid reflux if your baby has a lot of hair. And I did. And the doctor said you could feel her head again. And so I tested her head again. He was like, deep breath in and push for 5 seconds. I did a couple of those. And then there's one moment in the video where you can't see in the video, but the baby's head was like right at the exit. And he says, okay, push for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, stop. Big cough. And he tells me to do a big cough. And I cough. And I remember watching this moment in the mirror on the big cough. Her head literally just pops out of the hole. Like that big moment of trying to get the baby's head out of the hole happened on a cough. So different from my first experience where Milo's head was like at the exit for maybe 10 minutes. That was a majority of my pushing, was trying to get his head out. And I remember how hard it was to do that. And I remember my doctor in New York City taking her fingers and like stretching me open. And she was actually like a small woman. I remember her like standing on her tippy toes, pushing down, trying to like stretch me as big as she could and putting like all of her body weight on me to help his head get out. And this time it was literally a cough and her head was out. And you could see Michael's face in the video. His eyes get wide and he's like, oh my God, her head is out. And then he says, another big cough. And I cough again and like she moves out even further. And with Milo, I actually had a slight 1st-degree tear. They told me it was on the inside. It wasn't a really big deal, but it was just a gash that I could kind of see somewhere along the inside. And this time, as I kind of realized, because of the way the baby's head just slipped out on a cough, I didn't tear at all, which I was so grateful for. Postpartum healing is hard enough just after having a baby because you are bleeding for weeks and weeks just from your uterus contracting, and having no tear has been phenomenal in this postpartum period. It's now officially part of Milo's nighttime routine to tell us what color hiya vitamin he wants in the morning when he wakes up. We just got our 2nd refill of these vitamins. Thankfully, they came just on time, so we didn't have any days without the vitamins because these are truly Milo's favorite part of the morning. Hiya vitamins have no sugar, none of that gummy junk, yet somehow they still taste delicious for kids. These vitamins are loaded up with essential vitamins and minerals to support things like immunity, energy, brain function, and so much more. And when you place your order, Hiya sends you this cool refillable yellow bottle, which comes with stickers so your kid can decorate it and make it really their own. And then you get eco-friendly refill packets every month. The Real Stuff team worked out a special deal with the brand for my podcast listeners. You can get 50% off your first order of Hiya's best-selling children's vitamins today. That is half off, which is an amazing deal. To claim it, go to hiyahealth.com/realstuff. The deal is exclusive to listeners of our show. It's not available on their regular website. So go to hiyahealth.com/realstuff and get started today. At this point, if the doctor had been just delivering the baby on his own, she would have slipped out in 8 seconds from this moment because head was out. He would have just told me to push and he would have done his little hand maneuver and like pulled her out. But because Michael was down there and because the doctor was using this as a teaching moment to tutor Michael on how to deliver a baby, she ended up staying like that with her head sticking out of me for probably 2 full minutes while the doctor like coached Michael with what to do. And apparently once the baby's head comes out, there's like, I could be saying this wrong, but there are like 6 or 7 positions that you need to maneuver the baby into to pull her out and like safely get her out. Got to get like a shoulder out and then you turn her head to the side and you do put your hands here. And there's like certain hand positions where you need to put your hands to protect different parts. He had one hand down below. He said to Michael, like, with this hand, we're going to protect her perineum. And with this hand, we're protecting her urethra and her clitoris up here. And like, you have to keep your hands like this to protect those things. And then we're going to push in and we're going to twist and we're going to do this and that. And he's literally coaching Michael on how to do all of this. They're just kind of doing their thing all the while I'm looking between my legs and just seeing a head sticking out. And also, I don't know much about like when a baby's coming out or when you should hear them cry or what color they should be, but I just remember I asked a few times like, is she okay? Like, is she good? And every single time the doctor in the most calm way just responded and said, she's perfect. She's perfect. Like he was just so calm, and his ease and calmness put me at ease. The whole experience was just incredibly calm. And after he had Michael maneuver her properly and put his hands in the protection places, he just said to me, okay, bear down. And as I bear down, it's like the whole body just slips out into their hands. You can hear me in the video be like, oh, what a relief. I think I literally say what a relief because it feels like you are relieved. Like it feels like you are taking a big poop out of your vagina. There's no other way to put it. It doesn't feel like good like that. It's not like you have nerve endings that feel good. It's just like pressure coming out and like, oh my gosh, this thing that's been inside of my stomach area for so long is just like removed. She came out. Michael literally caught her and with the doctor's help kind of picks her up and puts her on me. And then everyone starts like cleaning her off. And it probably took another, I don't know, 10 or 15 seconds before we heard a cry. Another one of those moments where I didn't know what was normal. I didn't know if she was supposed to have let out a cry already, but she didn't cry for a few seconds on me. And so as I'm holding her, I'm like, is she okay? Like, is everything good? And once again, the doctor just in the most casual way, he's like already taking his gloves off and he's just like, she's perfect. She's perfect. It's totally good. Like he just had this Hakuna Matata attitude the whole time that was so appreciated. After this whole experience, Michael has reflected on his decision to do this with the doctor. And he basically says he's so happy that he did this. Originally, he did not think it was something he wanted to do. He would never have thought of this idea for himself. He was not particularly dying to help deliver a baby, but after all was said and done and after doing it, he talks about what a unique experience it was and how amazing it was and how he's just so happy that he did something out of his comfort zone because what a cool thing to say that you were the first person to hold your baby and catch her and just to do that. It's really amazing. And so as I mentioned, the pushing started at 6:05 and at 6:13, we had a baby girl in room 12. And it was very exciting, very different from the whole first experience for me of delivering a baby, which felt like the energy in the room felt like a football game or like running a football drill. The doctor the first time was literally chanting, okay, Lucie, 1, 2, push harder, Lucie, 3, 4, like so much intense energy. And my memory of the experience was very competitive sports. Like Michael and I both remember it that way. This time, the doctor is literally going, okay, we're going to push for 10 seconds. 1, 2, good job. 3, 4, like so calm. I don't know. Maybe some people prefer one experience over the other. I was really excited about both experiences. Like I kind of feel like the first one being as intense as it was exactly what I envisioned. And that was nice and exciting at the time. But for the second one, like I don't know. I loved this. It was so calm, silly, enjoyable. Like the moment the baby came out after she cries, we're all just like laughing and making jokes and having a good time. And my memory of the experience, even despite that one really scary moment, is so positive. I actually said to Michael, I don't want to have any more kids in my life, but I genuinely feel like the experience of pushing out a baby, if it goes like that, is something that I can do every month of my life. Like I would happily deliver a baby every single month. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be postpartum for every month of my life. I don't want to deliver a baby if I'm going to have a tear or a C-section every month. But if it happens like that, I could do that like once a month. But don't worry, I won't be doing that again. I really don't think we're having another child. So it was just a very exciting moment filled with so much fun. And I think the most exciting thing about having a baby and going into labor is that you know, as you're in the experience, that you are living in the midst of a moment that you are about to remember for the rest of your life. It's one of those moments where your senses are heightened and everything that's happening around you, you're kind of taking in and locking in forever. The time codes of like when things are happening and what the doctors say, that tends to get a little fuzzy, which is why I was trying to write down the time code so I could remember it. The actual experience and like the essence of the room and the moment is something that you do not forget. And to be in the middle of that moment is just so exciting. And I remember that's why I wanted to go into labor so badly, because I was just so excited to have that moment again. Like I had it once and it was so exciting and I knew what was coming the second time. And it was maybe even more lucid to me and, you know, just more locked in my mind. So if you are pregnant or if you're planning on having a baby in the future, I wish every single one of you a labor and delivery experience that is as blissful as that was. I don't wish the epidural experience on you with the blood pressure drop. A lot of people ask me, you know, if you had another baby, would you not get another epidural now because of what happened with the blood pressure? And I genuinely don't know. I kind of think I would, because I do think that the other benefits of the epidural sort of outweigh that one fleeting moment, even though it was so terrifying and so scary. At the end of the day, the actual thing that was happening to me was just a blood pressure drop, which is a lot less scary than what I thought it was, which was, you know, I thought my body was shutting down. A blood pressure drop, I understand, makes you feel like you're going to pass out, but it's not really all that dangerous for you at the end of the day, I think. So I don't know. I think I would get it again because the epidural is really what makes, in my opinion, the pushing and the delivery an enjoyable experience. Rather than you calling out in pain, you get to kind of enjoy the process of watching your baby come out without feeling the pain, which is just really cool. And modern medicine is amazing. And I'm so grateful for hospital staff and nurses and the doctors and everyone that just makes this experience safe and makes you feel safe. And I wish this experience on everyone. Baby Colette, or as we're calling her, Coco, came out at 7 pounds, 3 ounces, 19 and a half inches long, and she was born exactly at 39 weeks and 2 days. Note to self, don't expect that the way things happen with your first is how they're going to happen with your second, because that was my first lesson of these are 2 different kids. They're going to come in their own time. The experiences of delivering them and raising them are not going to be the same. So got it. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope you found it enjoyable. I love hearing labor and delivery stories, specifically positive ones. If you have any follow-up questions after this, feel free to comment them on YouTube or drop any comments down below on Instagram. We are approaching the end of season 1 of the show. We have so many fun guests lined up, future episode ideas for season 2. Don't forget, if you have some sort of crazy life story or something that you want to share about on the podcast, either anonymously or not, please email therealstuffpod@gmail.com. We are collecting audience caller stories, and I'm really loving the episodes where people come on and just tell us a story of a life experience. That's really where I want to go with this show. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week on the Real Stuff Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Stuff. I'm Lucie Fink. Don't forget to follow the show on social media at The Real Stuff Pod. And if you're liking these episodes, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written review. It helps the show so much. And if you're feeling called to come on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. We'll see you next week for another intimate conversation on The Real Stuff.